Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kesgrave Panthers Podcast. Today, our guest is none other than 18-time British champion and former world champion Steve Harris. How are you feeling today, Steve?
Yeah, all is good. All is good now. It's Friday, so the weekend's coming up, and it's still within the Cycle Speedway season. So, got matches tomorrow and Sunday. So, what more can you want? Finish work and weekend of racing.
Well, good luck in them. But to start off with today, how did you get into Cycle Speedway yourself?
I started off many years, 40 years ago, really, playing around, which wasn't really organised Cycle Speedway. It was a few friends from school wanted racing bikes and copying Speedway riders and going down the park, and we had some tyres hidden in the bushes. And used to sort of make up a track and make up our own meetings. This has nothing to do with really organised Cycle Speedway. And that carried on for a good sort of 6 months. And after that 6-month period, the Swindon Cycle Speedway Club found out about us and tried to drag us all down. That's always the same, trying to recruit. So it's sort of 6 months of riding around tyres in some sort of unorganised Cycle Speedway competition between a load of sort of 14-year-olds to then going out and turning up on the track and starting to race for Swindon Cycle Speedway Club.
Do you remember?
Cool.
No, continue. Do you remember your first meeting?
Yeah, the 1982 Swindon Junior Championship. I didn't do very well. That was, I think, the only match I ever rode in 1982. So I probably didn't really start racing properly until 1983. So, and that was my first sort of official Cycle Speedway match, and then sort of competing for Swindon in like 1983 and in the second team, and then moving forward from there. And then it's keep going. And now I'm 9 years down the track and still racing.
Do you really know what inspired you to race, or like what really you raced for? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Well, to be honest, I think at the time there was no other form of cycling sport that was short and sprint sort of based, if you know what I mean. I mean, from the age I could ride a bike, I always wanted to be racing around the lampposts in the street with some of my mates of the same age or whatever, on whatever bike we had. So I just love racing on a bike. From as long as I can remember, really. I race anybody if you want. Doesn't really matter. But at that time, it's probably even before there was even BMX racing or any sort of track cycling. So there was no other sport of cycling that wasn't involved in either time trials or road racing or something like that. So I just sort of fell into Cycle Speedway because it was the only sort of sprint sort of form of cycle racing available. I think a few years after I started, BMX became a bit more popular in the UK, but I just happened to go there. I know some people start because they love the Speedway connection. I don't think I'd ever watched or even heard about Speedway match until I really started doing Cycle Speedway. There's obviously some sort of connection. So, yeah, just wanted to race a bike and still want to race a bike now, 40 years later.
Do you have a favourite track?
It's hard to say on that one, really, because I don't. The reason I say I don't have a track, some tracks suit your style more, but I think when I got to a certain level, I decided that I'm not going to like or dislike any tracks. It's the same track. It's the same track for everybody. It may be a little bit more slippery than you like. It may be a little bit tighter or a bit big. But I always wanted to sort of rule that out of my philosophy of I don't like this track or I do like this track to I'm racing on the same track as everybody else. So whatever that track throws up at me, I'm racing on the same track as that person. So I've kind of dispelled that I have a favourite track theory when I was sort of started to get successful in my 20s. I've completely ruled that out as of I'm racing on the same track as you. So if I have to adapt my technique a little bit, or I have to suit the track, or it's wetter than it normally is, or it's slipperier than it normally is, then I don't really. So I don't know, it's perhaps a psychological thing I went through that I had to rule out that track suits me, or I like that one, or I don't like that one. Do you understand what I'm saying with that? It's sort of, we can put 2 tin cans on a beach and I'll race you around there if you want, don't mind. that's just the way I turned out to becoming when I started sort of looking into the psychology. I'm not going to go, don't like that track, so I'm not going to do well. So roll that out of your mind and proceed, if you like.
Yeah. You
Good.
say that as you were getting slightly more into your career that you didn't have a favorite track, but when you're like starting out, or like not as or like as high level as you are now, like would you say you had a favorite track?
Well, I grew up racing Swindon, so I think you always like that. Apart from that, in the early days, I really disliked Horsepath, but that's the opposite side of the question. I don't know. You didn't really race that much, quite so many tracks. I was trying to think. From the early of the sort of first 10 or 15 tracks I raced on, I really liked the Bristol tracks, both Bristol St George and Bristol Airport Road. I don't know why. They were quite long straights, both fairly tight corners. But, like I said, early days, apart from my home track, it was them. And I used to have a complete dislike from Horsepath when I was a teenager, until I sort of decided to rule it out and deal with it and get on with it.
So you were saying that you just try and deal with the tracks and like everything's the same for everyone. Do you have any other pieces of advice like that?
I don't know. Apart from it is, I don't know if you're talking about any sort of advice. Firstly, my advice is free to anybody in the sport. We're in a small sport. I'm not going to say to some person, if they ask for my advice, it's not available. General advice, one of the best bits of advice I can give out is, if you want to race for championships, if you're competing to win, some people get really lucky and win it really early. Some people, it takes a lot of tries and a lot of attempts. Even if you look at the current top riders, of Paul Hurd raced in, 6, 7, 8 British finals before he won one. Ben Mulder rode in quite a few before he did. So the one thing you have to learn is, you've got to keep yourself in the competition in the first 2 to 3 races. It's much easier to be out of competition, out of the chance of winning a title in the first 3. It's too easy to blow it then. So whatever, keep yourself in the competition for as long as you can. So if that means, if you started on number 13 with 2 gate 1s, after 2 or 3 rides, you want to be in 8 or 10 or 11 points. But if you started with tougher grids, being 9 points or 8 points can still give you that chance to finish off well and win it. So always keep yourself in the competition if you're aiming for titles.
You say you focus like more on the psychology of the sport, like as you progressively got better. But when would you say like that, like the switch flipped in your head and you knew that what you wanted to achieve and stuff?
Well, I just over a period of time, you learn more and more things, and there are some sort of, sports psychology and that sort of thing, but it's about being motivated and driven. I would suggest, really, I started to become really competitive in my late 20s, about 26, 27, 28, when I didn't really put much effort into the sport before that. I just turned up and raced and still did reasonably well. But it just got to the stage where I think, at that sort of time, you start thinking, hold on, I've been doing this sport for 10 years at a decent level, but I haven't actually won anything. And so then you sort of decide, okay, time's moving on, so to speak. So I need to perhaps put a bit more effort in and actually really focus on trying to win titles, or it's not going to happen. So yeah, probably towards mid to late 20s is when you really sort of start perhaps analysing things a little bit more and that. So
what would you say is your most memorable moment at a meeting?
There is so many, really, to be honest with you. But I've been lucky enough to have raced so many international matches and things like that. Obviously, I've been lucky enough that twice 3 times I've been in the England World Cup winning team, but 2 times I was on the rider in the race where we won the match. So that always counts when you cross the line and know England have won the World Cup, and you're not wholly responsible for it, but you've done whatever's needed to do that. And of course, back in the day where, in 1999 when I won the World Championships, I just, at that time I was 31. So, I wasn't a real youngster, but I was in really top form and it was my day. I went out there and crossed the line and just, you don't know what to do. It's sort of, would this ever happen? Would I ever get a chance to do it? And all of a sudden it's happened. And you're like, for a few seconds, you just don't really know what to do, what to say. But moments like that, but there is over the period of time, quite a lot of big moments like that I've experienced. So, make the most of them because that day finishes quickly. That's what I will say. You do get successful and have a great day. Enjoy the day because that day soon goes over and it's Monday or the next day and something like that. And that moment has passed. So enjoy those moments.
Yeah. So you won your world title in Poland, and I hear that you rode one season in the Polish Extra League, or you spent a few seasons in the Polish Extra League, and you rode more over there than here. Why is that?
Well, I mean, my Polish sort of cycle speedway career in the year 2000, I was one world champion in 99, and a Polish team wanted me to go and race some matches in 2000, and they were prepared to pay flights for me to go and everything like that. So that was a great experience, and that was in the year 2000. From there on, it moved on that, I was always connected with a little bit with the Polish Cycle Speedway League, but it got to about 10 years later, really. It got to the end of 2010, and I was thinking I wouldn't mind racing one more year in Polish League, etc. So I just put out a few messages. My personal circumstances had changed, and I knew I could free and go over, every other weekend if necessary. So I put out a few messages, and then I got messages back saying the Coletti team, which was just got into the Polish Extra League, messaged me and said, yeah, we want to talk to you. We want you to come and race for us, etc., etc. So I had a vision in my mind to go in 2011 and race, perhaps one more season in Poland. That turned out to be 4 seasons where I did, the vast majority, as many league matches in Poland as I did in England. It's just for the experience as well, different changes, because by that time I'm, just got to 40, lucky to still be racing at a very high level. And so 2011, 2012, I raced for Coletti, did the majority of more matches in the Extra League, the Elite League at that time in England. And then I did 11, 12, 13, 14, 2013, I joined Świętowice, and I'm still really connected with that club now, and did sort of 2 seasons where I'll be sort of 7 or 8, 9 league matches a year, going to work Monday to Friday, on the plane Friday night, back home Sunday night or Monday morning, and into work. So it was great experience. And I, lucky enough, I've had some really good times over there and really enjoyed the challenge as well. When you go to Poland, you have different tracks to deal with, really, to be honest with you. And again, it's one of those things that over there, I think you have to learn different techniques, if you like, to racing in England. If I wanted to highlight that, racing in England is pretty much one technique. You lean the bike as far as you can, go around the corner as fast as you can, and as smooth as you can. But if you're in Poland, sometimes you're racing on tracks with softer surfaces and maybe some ruts and everything like that, where you might have to lean the bike in carefully, get into the rut, lean the bike over further, and come back up. So you have to learn to adapt styles, so to speak, and learn that it's not just one technique for racing cycle speedway in Poland. So it's always just down there for a challenge, and I'm still trying to learn even today, a bit more about racing cycle speedway and what you can do. So that was really the experience. But 2011, I wanted to go try one more season racing in Polish League, and it ended up being 4 seasons. But it's absolutely fun times to do that.
So apart from just the riding, like the riding style being different, were there any other differences like with riding in Poland to what it's like over here?
I just think you've got to adapt more. You've got to adapt, as I just said. You've got one style which suits pretty much every track in England. But no, it's similar. I mean, I was back in Poland in the early days of the in the mid 1990s, where perhaps there was sort of, tracks with car tyres forming the inside line and things like that. But it's developed a lot over the last 25 years, racing in Poland. And most of the tracks are fairly similar. The surfaces can be a little bit softer and that. But no, it's coming into that model of fairly similar sport, I think. Although there are more variations of no different variations in track sizes, I don't think. There's some small tracks in Poland, but they're no smaller than the smallest tracks in England. There's some larger tracks but they're no bigger than the larger tracks in England. So there's not a massive difference from that respect, but the surface is probably more varied.
Yeah. So I believe that you won one of your world titles over in the USA. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we did so that was the 2011. That was my second Veterans World title. Yes. Yeah, it was cool.
What would you say the track was like over there? Was it any different to like the Polish and the?
I think I don't want to be critical about it, but I think Europe were due to stage a world championship, gave it up to try and promote the sport in America. Unfortunately, that it was sort of in a small town with not much general interest around it as well. So it was a trial that didn't really work. As far as the track surface went, I think it was really lucky because the Australians arrived a few days before and they spent about a day and a half trying to get the track right to, how everybody expected from Poland and England and themselves, So look, the presentation was great in America. The track, I don't think it's been used since that day in Edenton. I don't think there's been a match on there since the world final of 2011. So it was a shame, really, that the sport couldn't get promoted and even take off to a basic club level over there. But it was a development risk, I guess. So racing out there, by the time we come around to it, the track was reasonable to race on, quite flat, but no different to anywhere else, but it was just the fact that we never managed to help get the sport launched in America in any way, shape or form. There's been a couple of tries since and before, but it's just a gamble that didn't really work in promoting the sport. But it was a good fun trip and the racing was still quite good, although we ended up with a world championship where some of the best riders from England, some of the best riders from Poland, and some of the best riders from Australia went to compete in a world championship in a field in a small town in the middle of nowhere in America.
Would you say that you have a favourite team riding partner?
Yeah, definitely. That would be Mark Bowler. I spent 10 years racing in the same team with him at Allspath when Allspath sort of dominated the Elite League or Premier League for quite a number of years. And he's just, I didn't have to say anything. He knew what I was going to do before I did it. And I knew what he was going to do before he did it. We didn't race as a pair regularly, but it was always for I think about 7 or 8 seasons. It was always me and Mark Bowler in the last race, and then we'll see what we have to do and manage to turn around a few matches. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's just we both have similar skill sets, but I think as I just said, I know what he was going to do before he did it, and he knew what I was going to do before I even knew what I was going to do. So, and it just worked so well. So yeah, loads of great memories of winning close matches and perhaps pulling out a heat win in the last heat to secure a match. So it just worked really well.
Like I've seen you ride, and your riding style is very unique, I'd say. I haven't seen many people like it. Would you say like you try to be like anyone while you ride, like while you were growing up? You tried to
well, someone you had on there a few weeks ago was my idol when I sort of reached 16 and 17, and that was Jim Varnish. He was number one. I guess I'm quite tall, not quite as tall as Jim, but he was one of the tallest riders around at the moment. So I guess when you're cornering, but Jim Varnish was the sort of first person I sort of idolized, I guess, really, But within a year or two of me seeing racing, I was racing British finals against him, so it's great. But can I just go back and ask? You said I've got a unique style. What do you think is my style is unique?
Well, I've seen you you lean the bike quite far over, I think, and when you corner, your leg is very straight, and I don't really see that very
Quite
often.
a long way forward, yeah.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know. I've done, again, different things and whatever. In cycle speedway, if you can go around, the more you can lean the bike around the corner without slipping, without losing any momentum, the tighter lines you're going to ride. Okay, and especially you don't want to be pushing it so you slip in every corner. But it's something I still practice with, if you like. Is I haven't got the same top speed as I had 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But I know that if I can get around the corner a fraction quicker, or one wheel length faster, or then I can still stay with these real quick youngsters like yourself and some of even the top riders. But I can't match them top speed, so I have to keep pushing and doing that. But it's all down to getting that angle as far as possible without taking the risk and without making a slip. There's no good getting the bike over a lot if you slide every other corner, then you lose all that momentum. But if you can get it and keep it to the maximum limit and fill that limit, then yeah. And the other thing is, I guess, quite tall. I've always had my foot quite a long way forward, so towards the front wheel, and I guess that's just down to the fact that if you're pushing it to the limit all the time, if your back wheel slips, you're going to recover. If your front wheel goes completely, you're more likely to hit the deck. So the fact you have your front foot, so my leg out sort of fairly straight and towards the front, gives you more protection of making a mistake in that respect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you say that you have a favorite pre-meeting meal?
Generally, I have boiled egg, scrambled egg on toast in the morning before a match if I'm at home. Possibly a banana about an hour before, but that's about it. I don't really eat anything more than that. With your average match that starts at 2:00 in the afternoon, I usually find that I'm really hungry by the end of it, because I'll have breakfast and maybe a banana an hour before a race, and that's it. So yeah, egg on toast is the meal in the morning. It always comes a little bit more complicated if you're racing 2 matches in a day, or you're racing starting at 5 or something like that, because that sort of upsets the routine, doesn't it? Have me egg on toast and then start at 2, and then you have to adapt that a little bit, I guess. But that's it. Nothing more than that.
Yeah. So also, it's quite mental how you have qualified for how many 25 British finals, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
We haven't even been alive that long, and you've made 25 British finals containing 18 consecutive, which is, I think, pretty mental.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I was just lucky that at 18 I made my first senior final, and I'd missed 1 or 2 along the way, but somehow I managed to make my last one at the age of 49, 31 years later. So yeah, I've just kept racing all the time, different times. At certain times I trained harder and whatever, but I was back in my first final. I was Roger Ellis, and it was a real top rider at the time. Jim Varnish, Dennis Hubble, Tim Snook, and then I've raced generation after generation, if you like. Yeah, I've started to slow down a little bit though in the last few years. So I've not entered the last 3 or 4 years, but it was always a challenge. August Bank Holiday. That's where I've been for the last 30 or 35 August Bank Holidays, is at the British final. So yeah, I'm proud of those sort of records, but records are there to get beaten. I jokingly think with Paul Hurd and Ben Mould, you all you have to do is race at over 14 British finals and you break my record, or something like that. And just a little bit in jest, but records are there to be broken. So, I'm proud of what I've done, Proud of the longevity, if you like, of my career. But it's just that I wanted to keep racing at a high level for as long as I can. So yeah, that's it. I'm really pleased that I've done that. Never actually won it. Had a second once, and had lots of falls, but never actually won the British Senior Final. So, despite everything else, just always loved the bank holiday weekend, and there's always a special buzz about the British Final, and some other big matches as well. World Finals, European Finals, and all those sort of things. You just gotta absolutely love doing it. So, always love the big matches, and the day you wake up on that morning, and something big's happening in Cycle Speedway. So,
do you think you're ever gonna have another go at making a final, possibly winning it?
Veterans, yeah. No, come on. You have to be realistic. I mean, I was fairly lucky that I even got into a train so hard in my early 40s just to keep going at that level. Where it's easier. The easy route was to perhaps just go and just race some club races and whatever. But the fact that, all these top riders now, like Josh Brook, Chris Timms, Paul Hurd and everything like that. In Ben Mould, I've raced in Great Britain teams with them when they were a bit younger, but they've never seen me as a 20-year-old, or even probably I don't think any of these has even really seen me ride since even in my 30s. So they've only seen me and raced against me since I was in my 40s and that. So it's always this is just a nice fact that I've managed to keep in the sport at a really decent level for so long.
Yeah. So I think we've done quite well today. So thank you, Steve, for talking about all your British finals, your Polish careers, and your eggs.
Yep. And the eggs on toast, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Charlie, for joining me once again.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. And congratulations, Noah, on being the British Under-16 champion a few weeks ago.
Thank you. And we will see everybody next time. Goodbye.